those of America. He used the word fairness about 2 or 3 times in that press conference. How is this fair to bar students who have worked their ass off to get the best grades out there, to sacrifice so many things, and say, no, you don't get it because maybe your family had money? You know, and particularly the Asian kids in this country have been dominated. But this is the best news for black Americans. It can be. It can be.
Why? If
we allow it, because maybe now we will demand strong educations for our kids beginning in kindergarten, so this kind of thing becomes a moot point. We should never even have to consider things like this if there wasn't for the bigotry of low expectations, mostly by liberal cities that do not think highly of black people. Oh, they like us, but they don't think we're smart. And so the Faustian deal has always been, we'll give you a watered-down education. Your kids will graduate 12th grade with an 8th grade reading level, but we'll make it up to you. We'll give you fair housing. We'll give you food stamps. We'll find a way to make it up. We'll push affirmative action. We'll get you into jobs that you may not necessarily be qualified for. That's the Faustian deal. It's time to end the Faustian deal. I got a lot more on this on my show, by the way.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So as you know, the mainstream liberal media and the Democrat Party, they're having an absolute meltdown. They're losing their minds over the fact that the Supreme Court struck down systemic racism by not allowing affirmative action to be used in college admissions. Now, again, Democrats are crying about this because they're claiming that, well, you know, this means that black people and Hispanic people aren't going to be able to get into college and universities because black people and Hispanic people are apparently too stupid to compete with everybody else. Okay, this is what Democrats believe. This is what the mainstream liberal media believes. And it's just so hilarious to me to watch these people argue in favor of systemic racism when they claim they're supposed to be the party against systemic racism. Except they actually really do believe in systemic racism, just systemic racism against whites and Asians in college admissions. Okay, and they're showing you that that's exactly what they believe. Now, that takes me to this interview right here. That goes down between Abby Phillips of CNN, who you know is a bleeding heart liberal progressive that probably is upset that affirmative action got overturned. Okay, and then you have Kitty Zhu, who is a conservative-leaning Asian who was a part of the effort to have affirmative action struck down in the Supreme Court. Okay, and again, this guy has been fighting really hard to have this happen because he knows the writing is on the wall. He knows that as an Asian person, that the standards for somebody like him is much higher than for others, like black people, right? And Kenny Zhu is going to basically destroy Abby Phillips here in this little CNN debate / interview with facts on why that is the case. Because we know that CNN, Abby Phillip being a black woman, a black liberal woman, she's going to try to defend this because black liberal women probably benefit the most from affirmative action, in my opinion. So again, of course she's going to try to defend it. But again, what she's defending here is systemic racism. So without further ado, I actually want to go ahead and react to this exchange because it's great.
I'm going to bring in now Kenny Xu, president of Color Us United, a group that advocates against affirmative action. He's also a member of the board for Students for Fair Admissions. That's the group that brought this case against Harvard and the University of North Carolina. Kenny, thank you for joining us. So today's ruling obviously is one that you were hoping for, arguing that the rules in place that support affirmative action were unfair to Asian Americans. So from a practical perspective, how does today's decision help Asian American students looking to get into elite colleges?
I just want to say I'm ecstatic about this decision. It means that Asian Americans can finally get treated on their merits. Guys, we know why Asian Americans should get into Harvard at disproportionate rates. It's because they study twice as many hours as the average American.
Facts. Facts. That's all you need to hear right now. And this is why I tell the woke revolutionaries that are so upset about this, work harder, right? If you want to get into these elite schools, then you need to outwork the other students that are working hard, right? Outwork them. Study harder. Do more, right? That is how you respond to this. What you don't do is boo-hoo, whine, and complain and cry because you can't be racist against people who worked harder than you, right? Who earned it more than you did. It's really that simple.
It's not because of their race. It's because of their culture. It's because of their family values.
Facts. And this is why I say that the real solution to this is culture. It's family values. That's the real solution. Put the responsibility back on the parents in regards to the outcomes of children. Because good culture, strong family values, valuing education can and will produce elite students.
Academic excellence, that should be prioritized. Those should be the values that schools like Harvard and Chapel Hill, supposedly elite schools and academic programs, should be valuing in an applicant, not race.
So you've argued also that Harvard and other colleges should get rid of their legacy admissions, which also gives people points for having a parent that went to that school. That's not happening here. I wonder why not challenge that, which is also presumptively an obstacle for Asian Americans being treated fairly in the admissions process.
Well, I hope you followed the case, but Students for Fair Admissions has challenged legacy admissions repeatedly over and over again. In fact, we argued that the way that Harvard could implement some of their diversity policies without discriminating against Asian Americans is to get rid of legacy admissions, which, as you know, disproportionately privilege white applicants. In fact, 33% of Harvard students who are white are legacy, and they have a 5 times more likely chance of getting in if you are legacy. So you really want to ensure diversity in admissions? Get rid of legacy admissions.
You know, it's funny because she tried to get him with a gotcha. Well, why don't you guys fight against legacy admissions? That overwhelmingly benefits whites and it's against Asians, right? This is what they say, okay? Because, you know, they're salty that legacy admissions are still out. And look, here's the thing about legacy admissions. I'm against that as well, too. But at the same time, you know how you fight that? It's the same thing. Culture, academic excellence. Because if you get into these schools, you achieve, and then, you know, you give money back to the school, and then all of a sudden you benefit from legacy admissions. But again, regardless, you know, I would rather see legacy admissions go away, or they have a lot less emphasis on that, because you really shouldn't be able to just buy your way into a school. Okay, if your family's rich, they donate to the school or whatever, you get in. Or if your family went to the school and now all of a sudden all the kids get into the school because the family went to school. Nah, that's also not necessarily a merit-based thing, okay? So, again, I would lean towards getting rid of legacy admissions as well, too. But, again, this guy is fighting against that. He's not a hypocrite on this issue. He's fighting against that as well, too.
You heard today President Biden expressing some concerns over socioeconomic factors and inequality being made worse given this decision. He also presented what he called basically a way forward. I wonder if you take race out of the picture and you do what the president is suggesting, taking socioeconomic status into consideration, do you think that that would be fair to Asian American students as well?
No, I don't. I think that admissions should be only based on merit. And the reason why is because you can't, why are we asking a university to calculate somebody's level of adversity? I think that that sets a very bad precedent.
Facts. Facts. They have an adversity calculator, right? A victimhood calculator. How victimize this person? Okay? You're not a victim enough, therefore you have less of a chance of getting into our school. It's just silly. It's extremely silly. And they do it based off race. Again, my opinion, I think that's racist. I think it's racist to assume that somebody had it hard in life just because they're black or just because they're a woman, okay, as well, too, because that's also a factor as well, too, right? Being a woman also is supposed to be a disadvantage. It's just amazing how that works. It doesn't make any sense. This is not what we should be doing in a society in which we value meritocracy, which we should. That's exactly what we should be doing.
For anybody trying to get into college, we should be treated on the basis of our merits. We should be treated on the basis of how hard we work, our study, our SAT scores, our grades. A name-blind, race-blind process is what I would advocate for as president of Colorado United.
Kenny, can I ask you, though? I mean, colleges, obviously, they care about grades and SAT scores, but they also are filling universities of people, human beings who have other factors that they bring to the table. Why is it not okay for them to consider those things?
I'm saying if you're going to consider those things, you should consider them without respect to race.
Sure.
So as you know, a lot of Asian Americans.
I think that that's exactly right. But socioeconomic status doesn't. If you take race out of it, let's call it socioeconomic status, where whether or not they grew up wealthy or poor, is that not something that colleges might have an interest in considering? The
reason why you shouldn't consider that is because you should consider the success of an applicant. Because of affirmative action, Black Americans graduate from law school at the bottom 25% of their classes, largely speaking. And we don't want that. We want Black students to succeed. We want every student to succeed, low-income students to succeed. But you have to put them in scenarios, in places where they're likely to succeed. And lowering your standard to admit somebody of a socioeconomic status or race would not help them do that. In fact, it would harm their graduation rate and excellence.
Facts. And it creates a stigma against them as well, too. It creates a stigma against Black people who do get into these positions, because people are going to say, well, are you affirmative action hire? Are you a doctor only because they lower your standards? And even if, again, you are from a lower socioeconomic status, the solution to helping those students is not to lower the standards for them, but to make sure that they have the resources necessary to succeed despite their situation. Which, I mean, in my opinion, school choice, right? School choice would be a policy that would help solve that problem. But again, Democrats are against that. They're against helping people of lower economic status get access to elite schools before they even go to college, right? Because if they had access to elite schools and resources before they go to college, then that would probably make them more equipped to get into these elite universities. It's kind of funny how that works.
Well, as the case also points out, the standard isn't necessarily lowered because students are all admitted. The question is whether race can be an added consideration, a tipping point
No,
in
the
some
standard
of these
is
cases.
lowered. The standard is lowered.
The
standard is lowered as the student premier admissions data shows. An Asian has to score 273 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person. So the standard is lowered for Black Americans.
Kenny Xu, thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate you joining us today.
She wanted to. She really wanted to counter him, but she couldn't. She had nothing, right? Facts, right? That's what happens when you present facts. When you present facts that goes against the left-wing narrative, that's what happens, right? She instantly ended the interview because she had nothing, right? She had no rebuttal, even though we know that she wanted to argue with him, okay? We know that she wants us to believe that the standards aren't being lowered for Black people when they are being lowered. And it's embarrassing. It really is. It's embarrassing. If you're Black and you are advocating to have lower standards for Black people, that is embarrassing, okay? We should all be holding ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to anything that we do in life, especially when you're talking about academics. But again, that's the problem. People don't want to hold themselves to a high standard. The bar is so low for Black people. It is the hard bigotry of low expectations, which I think is a real issue. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.